Allá por el 2006 se estrenó Borat, una película que a mí me presentó a Sacha Baron Cohen, que lo tenía de Ali G in the House, pero no lo tenía tan definido como actor, tan definido como persona. Vi esa película, me fascinó, no tanto la segunda, pero lo bueno es que pude hablar con uno que estuvo involucrado en ambas películas, principalmente en la primera como director de fotografía, fue el director de fotografía de la segunda unidad de la segunda película, por lo que nos enfocamos mucho más en lo que fue hacer esta primera controversial, polémica, por donde se la mire, las complicaciones que tuvo hacer esta película, un montón de detalles y anécdotas muy pero muy divertidas, todas sobre esa película llamada Borat.
We now return to Mira Akien and Contre with our latest interview.
The original director was Todd Phillips, and I had worked with him before. I had done a documentary for him before that and a few other things, some commercials and stuff. But the documentary we made, which was the first thing that I worked on with him, was called Frat House. And it was about fraternities and hazing, which is like a phenomenon that happens in the United States, fraternities in colleges, universities.
My name is Borat. I'm journalist for Kazakhstan. My government sent me to USA to make a movie film. Please, you look.
When I first got the call to meet up with Todd about Borat, I hadn't actually seen the show. I'd heard about it on HBO, but I hadn't seen it. So, I went away with a couple of DVDs back in the day before streaming, and I watched them and I found them hilarious, and I really couldn't believe the audacity and the talent that Sacha has. And so I signed on to the project, and Todd was the original director for like about a month. I think we were on until he and Sacha parted ways. And then we had a period of downtime while they were figuring out who was going to come on board to direct and whether or not, any of us were going to stay on board. And as it turned out, it ended up being Larry Charles, who I interviewed with because I'd never worked with him before that. And he kept me on, and Sacha and the other producers were very happy with some of the work that I'd done on it up to that point. So I stayed on and finished the movie with Larry.
Welcome to our country, okay?
My name is Borat.
Okay, good. Well, I'm not used to that, but that's fine.
He is largely in character from the beginning of the day to the end while he's in costume. I mean, always, if there's anyone around who's not part of the crew, for sure, he's always in character. And his thing is, even if like in places like New York City or places that were larger population where some people might have started to get a sense of who he was, or some people might have known, even if someone says something to him, he denies it in character and keeps going. So that's the way it is. He stays in character at all times. If there's anyone around who's not part of the crew, if we're privately in a van or something and we're moving from one location to the next, he might not stay in character in that moment. But he'll often have he sometimes had a half accent that he would take on, which wasn't the full Borat accent, but it wasn't his normal English accent either. It was kind of like a more relaxed, I don't want to say lazy version, but it was like not putting the full effort in. He sometimes lapsed into that a little bit amongst the crew.
Hello, nice to meet you. I knew it. Well, I want to say hello.
We were definitely trying to emulate a documentary experience. I mean, and part of that was one of the things that was maybe hardest mentally for me to just come to terms with as a cinematographer and taking on a project like that is that, when Todd first told me about it, he said, look, the idea is that it's supposed to feel like it's a Romanian crew that came with him to shoot this thing. And that was one perception, one idea. And so it should be really amateur and really feel bad, in a lot of ways. I mean, not so much the operating, because obviously we're trying to catch a real movie. I had a lot of documentary handheld experience prior to doing this movie. And like I said before, had done a lot with Todd. So, we were shooting it in a documentary vein. So the reactions and all of the things that come into play with being a documentarian held true with this, because although we had an idea of where the scenes would go, we didn't, like I said before, we didn't know exactly how people would react. So in that sense, it was a lot like shooting a documentary. Let's see what happens, but make sure you get it and make sure no one laughs. But part of me, it was a struggle because it was not meant to look like a polished movie, and it wouldn't be as good if it had. So at that stage of my career, I was trying to do pretty things, and it was a little bit of an internal struggle for me to just let go and be like, this is its own thing. And,
If this car drive into a group of gypsy, will there be any damage to the car?
It depends on how hard you hit them and all that. It's hard to say.
You have to react to what Sacha did, but how much was rehearsed or how much was improvised? If you have to maybe put it in percentage, nothing.
Nothing was ever rehearsed. No, not at all. We every scene we did was shot like just like you would do with a real documentary. I mean, it's, you know, you kind of have a sense of what the scene's going to be, the location, the people that you're dealing with, if it's something with people, but you don't know for sure exactly how it's going to go. And especially if it's an active thing where someone's maybe showing you through, let's say you're doing a documentary about a guy who's a woodworker and he's showing you around his shop. You don't know exactly where he's going to go, when he's going to go there, what he's going to pull out of the cabinet. So that in that sense, you know, being a documentary cameraman is a lot about being in the moment and following the story and listening and watching and sometimes anticipating what someone's going to do, so that the camera work is smooth and the movement captures what's happening. You don't want to be late to the thing that the person's trying to show you. You know, so it's that just comes from, I think.
Kazakhstan is the greatest country in the world.
But did you have a script, or how thick was the script that you like?
There was a script. There was a script that was kind of like a best case scenario of like, if things all went perfectly, this is where the scene would kind of lead and how it would get to the next thing. And it would be loosely filled with some of the kinds of things that might come up in conversation and some of the kinds of things that Sacha might say, but not verbatim everything. In fact, most of the really hilarious stuff would come out in the moment. And I think, you know, he and his writers worked at all hours after shooting each day. They would work, and between locations, they would work on, you know, other jokes and new jokes and figuring out ways and things to put into scenes.
Полицай. Policja. What? Okay.
Is this true that you ran from the police and that you were followed by the FBI?
Well, I don't really remember running from the police ever. We got stopped a lot. We got stopped. There was a map that one of my good dear friends who was on the movie made that was a map of incursions, police incursions, and all the different forces. And I forget how many times we got stopped, but it was a lot. It was like probably, you know, 20 plus times over the course of the movie in different states. And in Washington, D.C. alone, I think we had 7 or 8 different agencies, because it's, you know, there's like secret police, there's regular city police, there's park service police, there's all kinds of different organizations in Washington, D.C. And we got stopped by like 7 different ones, I think there. But, you know, we never ran from the police, no, but we got stopped and detained a little bit here and there for sure.
And why, because of what? What did they tell you when they detained you?
Well, you know, sometimes police got called by people who were upset, who we were filming, you know, and they sometimes they felt like they were taken advantage of or lied to, or, you know, whatever. But the thing is, everything was always on the up and up. I mean, we never shot anything with anybody before deals were made and releases were signed. So I think that what happens is people get upset because they think that they think they were lied to, when in fact, if you look at it and if you saw the contracts and all of that, they were never lied to. They just made assumptions, and their assumptions were wrong. And so what would often happen is if the police came, once it was seen that there was an issue over like the release or the contract or whatever, it becomes a civil matter. It's not really a criminal matter. So the police were like, you know, this is really not for us to deal with. You kind of have to take it to court if you want to sue or something, but this isn't really a criminal matter. So, you know, but nevertheless, they would get called a lot, and you know, we'd have to wait sometimes for a while until everything was worked out, and then we'd be on our way.
Yeah.
This is my country of Kazakhstan. It locates between Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and assholes Uzbekistan.
There were times that certain instances where it was a little nerve-wracking. And there's really physically, though, there were maybe only 2 kinds of time, or 2 times that I can remember, 2 incidences where I kind of felt like, okay, this could go really wrong. One of them was when we were in Romania and we were shooting in this gypsy village. And, you know, funny things can happen in gypsy villages. And our production had paid for, you know, location rights to shoot in front of a house. For example, if we're going to shoot here, they paid various members of the village who were going to appear in it. And so there were, you know, all these sorts of deals made. But the thing is, one house we were shooting in front of, and we were there for about 45 minutes or an hour while filming, and this guy comes up and he's pretty drunk and he's got like a shovel and he starts yelling at us in Romanian, and our Romanian crew is kind of like talking to him a little bit, but he kind of goes back like he's going to swing towards me because I'm holding a camera and I'm the one that's the most visible, representative of production. It turns out he actually owned the house, and the deal they had made was with somebody else who claimed to own the house and took the money and signed the thing and left. And then later this guy comes up and he's like, what the fuck are you doing in front of my house? I didn't get permission. And it was like that kind of thing. So
This is my house. Entry, please. He is my neighbor, Nur Sultan Tuliakbay. He is paining my assholes.
most of the time, if there was physical aggression, it was going to be towards Sacha.
Yeah.
And he was the one that was most in jeopardy at times. But just, it was a nerve-wracking thing because there were times when we had an idea of what was going to happen in a scene. We didn't know for sure because you don't really know how people are going to react. But we didn't also know exactly the things that Sacha would say. So there were times when he would catch us off guard and by surprise, and it was really hard to suppress the laughter because we couldn't believe what he just said. But there were instances where, we knew something was going to be really intense and really upsetting to the people we were dealing with, and we just didn't know how that was going to go down. So there was, a little bit of nervousness, like adrenaline, as we're waiting for the moment to happen. That was hilarious. I mean, that was a highly choreographed and scripted scene that, needed to look like it was just spur of the moment and like documentary and caught like that. So it was a blend, if you will. But we had like breakaway lamps, we had breakaway mirrors, all kinds of furniture that could be broken, like false stuff. So we had resets and, but everything from the camera movement and how the fight was going to work throughout the room was all heavily choreographed, including the exit and what happens after that. But I think we probably spent, it was like more than one day on that scene in the hotel room, I think, to get it complete. Because, there was a lot going on. The countries that tend to do these kinds of bans, you really have to look at what's their motivation and why they would ban such a thing. I mean, on the one hand, sometimes it's because of moral issues that they have a very, from an American standpoint, you would say maybe an uptight sort of society. Obviously, they have a different view. So I have nothing to say about that. I mean, every country has a different feeling about their moral standards. But when it comes to, maybe taking offense and feeling like your country is offended, and maybe that's why you're banning, in the end, it's all good publicity in the end, right? They always say no bad publicity. It only gets more press and probably going to be better for the film. Yes. So.
Please, you come see my film. If it's not success, I will be executed.